What is going on in the world and what is going on in your world? That's what I want to know. And that's what this whole shindig is all about that you're currently watching the SitRep. I was trying to figure out what's happening, what's going on in the world, what interesting things are happening in our world in the last couple of days, and then try and figure it out from the perspective of prepping. We all want to be better prepared, right? That's what we're here for. Be better prepared for any emergency, disaster, or just life that happens. Good morning to you, Outback Prepper _AU, who says, howdy, mate, on Instagram. Thank you very much for joining me on the Instagrams, on the YouTubes, and potentially even on Rumble. A little experiment today. I'm seeing if this YouTube flows from the YouTube into the Rumble. I know they sometimes don't work well together. But anyway, I'm starting a Rumble channel. There you go. Why? Because there's been some funny things happening on YouTube lately, i.e. videos not loading. So if you've been looking at the YouTube channel and going, where's Gads? Why is there no SitRep? Well, not my fault. Nice Baofang in the background there. We can see it there. Got the extended antenna and the extended battery on it as well. Well picked out. Well picked out. There's always something interesting going on. There are some new things here today, actually. I've got a little humidor and cigar cutter case just there. And I don't know if you can see this down. I'm going the wrong way. Here. Or is it there? There we go. That's a new cigar lighter. Anyway, I smoke cigars. Yeehaw. That's got nothing to do with what's happening in the world, though. So let's talk about what's happening in the world. First off, though, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who's joined. Really appreciate it. Everyone's hitting the like and subscribe button and all that sort of stuff. Helps spread the word, and that's what we're all about, is spreading the word of preparedness and hopefully getting more individuals into preparedness. My idea being the more of us who can be prepared when or if, but when the shit does hit the fan, the better off we're all going to be. The more people who can stand up and look after themselves, first and foremost, and then secondly, look after others. That's what this is all about. So let's jump into it without any further ado. Might be another way to put it. Where's my killer story to start off with here? Because it's all about Australians. Startling new figures show even more Australians are dying than first feared after a report found excessive deaths are the highest since World War II. People don't want to talk about it. This coming from the Daily Mail, Australia, Daily Mail, UK publication, but also has a Australian syndication. What are we looking at here? There were over 25,000 excessive deaths last year. Where's the uproar? Where's the people wringing their hands and saying we have to do more? Are there more jabs we can take? Can we, bolster the hospital system? What can we do? Can we lock people down? No, nobody's saying this because nobody sees it, because it's not in the news. It's not being faux gras fed down their throats. They don't care about it, basically. That's 15% above Australia's average mortality rate. 15 human beings out of every 100 are dying above and beyond what normally die. So, yeah. Odds are it being caused by the... You know what I'm talking about. I think that probably actually has a lot to do with it. But also, I think there's a whole heap of factors. In fact, in my opinion on this, a whole heap of factors. I think when you lock down human beings and you restrict their ability to move normally, so from a physical standpoint, that's a big deal. And I think that has a tremendous effect. And I think we're seeing some of that effect here. Also, the psychological effect, because it's when I say psychological effect, you've got physical and psychological. The two are interlinked. You can't separate them. So they're just two of the effects. And I think that's having a tremendous effect on people's health and well-being. And what we're seeing is causes deaths that are being labeled as mysterious as well. They're just saying excessive deaths. This is from last year's data, by the way. and they're not really attributing them to anything specific. They're not saying, "Oh, it was this. This is the cause." Hello to Chris Fleming on YouTube. Thanks for joining me. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I think it's affecting Australians. Obviously coming out of our ABS, but 60 years we're looking at this data. This is a pretty long stream of data that we're looking for at and comparing against. It's not like, oh, it's gone up in the last 2 years or 3 years or whatever, since World War II. And I think you could pretty easily argue that over that time period, since 1945, we have had a marked increase in what people can earn and what people can access, arguably. All right, there are some pros and cons. We can access more food. I'll put an asterisk on that because I wouldn't necessarily say we can access more nutrition or nutritional value. I think the nutritional value of that food has decreased significantly over that time period, and that could also be something that is affecting it as well. But certainly, we've had something that's happened in the last 3 years, and we've had a experiment that has been conducted population-wide that's happened in the last 3 years, and I think that definitely at least needs to be looked at or talked about. At the very least, we should be asking those questions. Well, directly on the same path here, Outback Prepper AU says, I think a contributing factor is the drastic decrease in the quality of food in the country. Seed oils, soy, artificial additives, GMOs, pesticides, all things known to cause death. Could not agree more. We have replaced good, solid, wholesome, natural food with shit. Chemical shitstorms is what most of our supermarkets are filled with nowadays, and fast food places and stuff like that. I mean, we've got a health food aisle. So I just asked the question, if that's the health food aisle, what's the rest of this stuff? Not health food? Junk food? Shit food? Is it even food? I don't know if we had a time traveler who popped in from some other time period way back when and looked at a supermarket, they'd probably just scratch their head. Most of the food that's in there is novel to human beings. It's just been created over the last 50 years, and increasingly so over the last, I would say, 20 years. So yeah, we're being force-fed a whole heap of stuff, which is horrific for us as human beings. And as I always say, one of the most overlooked preps for a prepper is your own health and well-being. It's your physical ability. Just notice my collar was up there. It's your physical ability and your health status. So how healthy you are at any given time. And what you put in your face matters. It matters a lot. It's a very confusing world. I get that, but the research is there. The information is out there. All you need to do is access it and make your own informed decisions about this. There's nothing crazy about that. There's nothing tinfoil hat about that. It's easy to point the finger. Easy people go like, "Oh, what? You eat meat? Oh, why? Are you I don't know, a Trump supporter or right wing or something?" It's like, no, I just like meat and I like to hunt as well. So yeah, these sorts of things. The information's out there, and I urge people to do their own research. But we really need to be thinking about what we're eating nowadays. Even the health food nowadays is filled with seed oils and soy. I've noticed a great doctor on Instagram called Carnivore MD says we should only purchase food from the outside borders around stores, things like meat, fresh dairy, and fruit. And I agree with that. And always, there's a sliding scale of stuff here. Pick up the packet of food that you're about to buy and read the ingredients. I'll just give you this. I'm just making this rule up off my head. If there are 3 things in that you either cannot pronounce or you do not know what it is, put the packet back down. Go home and research those things, and research them thoroughly as well to see what effect they have. And if it's no effect, see how long they've been in our food supply. Because there's plenty of things in our food supply at the moment that they say no known effects on humans. And it's like, yeah, well, we've been eating it for 18 months, 2 years, 10 years, whatever it is. How would you know the longitudinal effects that could have on the human organism. You can't. Anything that we've been eating for hundreds of years through generations, we could track what actual effect it has on human beings. But anything that's shorter than that, I think like there's problems in there. And also thinking about that, you don't need to go like keto, paleo, whatever label you want to put on it. I just think about, hey, what did we eat for hundreds of thousands of years as human beings as we evolved? It wasn't Kellogg's fucking cornflakes. I'll give you the hot tip. It was fruit. It was dairy, depending on where you are in the world. It was fruit, depending where you are in the world, and it was dairy, depending on where you are in the world. But it was certainly meat products. It was certainly vegetables. So and again, probably not the vegetables we look at today. I think if a time traveler came to our Woolies or Coles now, we dropped them in there from, I don't know, 1400 years ago, they'd be looking at this going, what is this stuff? Even 500 years ago, we go, they're carrots. And they're like, but they're orange. What? Where do you get orange carrots from? And oh my God, they taste like honey. This is unbelievable. They're so sweet. Yes, in the past, carrots were not always orange. Now we solely have orange carrots, but they were all sorts of colors like yellow and purple. So go and find some purple carrots, stick them in your face. That's what I'm saying. All right. What else we got going on in the world? Enough about Australians dying en masse. That's a bit doom and gloom. Let's have a happier thing. China's spy facility speculation swirls over Cambodia and Myanmar. Reports suggest China may be building up surveillance infrastructure on Myanmar's Coco Island and Cambodia's Ream naval base. This shouldn't be a shock to anyone. China's been very active in the past 2 weeks. Not only very active, but a lot of other information is coming out about China. And as I say, about all this stuff that comes out about China, yes, China is building their army and their military forces. Yes, China is moving. Yes, China is looking to secure something. Yes, China is looking to shift into being the power in the world, or at least part of it with the BRICS nations. That is happening, yes. Is China utterly evil and satanic? I have a bit of a hard time buying that personally. The first thing you need to do if you want to go to war is you need to convince the population that who you want to go to war with is horrific. I don't think China's good. I think China does a whole heap of bad stuff. I don't want to be ruled by China either, personally. No, don't want that. I don't want to be ruled by our current idiots that are in power either, just to put that in perspective. But again, take these sort of stuff for the propaganda that it is as well. It is true and propaganda. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. Just understand that. But also know China is being aggressive in their information collection techniques, in their building of facilities and stuff like that. And we're having that set up. And I've talked about this before, the ring a perspective, all right? The ring around Australia, around our northern borders, that they have been trying to create bases, create hard points, creating kind of almost a soft/hard power barrier in between us and, I guess, the US would probably be the main one. But any other nation as well, they want to sever this area off. Being that I think they probably rightly assess as there are a number of launching points that Western forces, or our side, if you want to put it that way, can launch from, and Australia would be a huge one, a really big one. In fact, we've got the ability to launch US assets from our shore today. They're already here, and there's probably going to be more of them. Outback Prepper says it used to be a natural oddity to find a carrot bigger than your pinky. And as somebody who has attempted to grow carrots many times, many times, as I like to say, I'm an avid gardener. That doesn't necessarily make me a good gardener, but I love doing it. I don't always succeed. That's part of gardening to me. Carrots are one thing that has eluded me. I've never grown a carrot bigger than my big finger. That was probably the biggest I've ever got. And I've never grown a straight carrot either, interestingly. And I know there are techniques, and I'm pretty lazy in doing it. Don't have enough sand in my soil and all that sort of stuff. And the dogs love digging up and eating carrots. I cannot figure that out for the life of me. If I fed them a carrot in their bowl, they'd turn their nose up at it, but put that thing in the ground and they'll tear it apart. Cat Grigg says, "No way!" Exclamation mark. Not sure what you're talking about, but way, whatever it is. Yes, way. It's a reference to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure there. All right, enough about China. Let's not talk about that. No, let's talk about some other China stuff. Let's talk about the Taiwan president meeting with the US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, which is the highest ranking person in the US that someone from Taiwan has ever met with. And this is a big deal. China obviously was warning beforehand, don't do it. I mean, they warned beforehand about the Pelosi visit, and US still did it. This, the way I see this, this is the US trying to be the big dog in China. Like, we still do what we want. I don't care what you say. We'll still do it, in really insignificant and pathetic ways. When it really comes down to it, they're not challenging China's growing power, and they are being challenged by China and failing a lot. I.e., let's talk about spy balloons for a second, right? There's a whole heap of news that just came out of that in the last couple of days that, yes, they confirmed that was collecting data and most likely sending it off as well over military bases in the US the whole time. Now, I think that the whole reason that thing hit the press, there was a number of reasons why it hit the press, but one of the reasons it put out into the press was from the US perspective to go like, hey, China's a real threat, look what they're doing. From the Chinese perspective, to show everyone that this big dog here is actually starting to look like an old, lame dog that one of its back legs doesn't work. Very forgetful dog, one that can't see. And look what we can do to them. We just sent a spy balloon, and it was there for a long time. And then they had to send their most advanced jet fighter to bring it down, a balloon. So it kind of shows the world. It's like, this might that is the US military force, and it is still the mightiest that is out there. Maybe it's not as mighty as you think. No way referencing was to China ruling us. Agreeing with you. Yep. Yeah. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Can't have that. All right. It's not going to happen. That's going to be your Red Dawn / Tomorrow When the War Begins. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was like thinking about Tomorrow When the War Began, how it's basically just an Aussie Red Dawn. I'd never like made the connection in my head for some reason. I was like, yeah, this is just totally Red Dawn Aussie style. Anyway, great books / films. Go see them. All right, what else is happening with the US? We'll jump back over there now. The Restrict Act is coming, and I had a quick read of it and looked at someone else's synopsis of it. It doesn't look great. Basically, I'm just going to read off a few of the things that are in this act. I'll put this my sort of 10,000 meter view of this act that they're about to pass through, or maybe have passed through. I haven't checked it, but essentially, it's kind of it's packaged. You may have heard of it as the anti-TikTok Act, right? They don't want TikTok. They think TikTok's collecting information off their people. So they said anyone in the government can't have TikTok on their government devices, on their phones and such what. They may have even gone as far as personal devices with government people, but they don't want anyone in the US to access TikTok. They have deemed it to be spyware, that it is spying and collecting information on their people. And they are a jealous God, the US government. Thou shalt have no other spies but thou art. I don't know what the ancient English version of that is, but they're basically saying like this is doing a better job than the NSA can do. Like at the Patriot Act, we brought that in so we could spy on our own people, and then China just makes this really cool app, and they get more information than we can. No, 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 we can't have that. So they're trying to ban these. Essentially, it's aimed at China. It's wrapped in this whole TikTok thing, but it's much more broad than that. In fact, the way it's written up is like scarily broad. The kind of power that they could use, and the thing is, it's not even aimed at TikTok. It's not even aimed at WeChat or any application. It's aimed at people in America. It's aimed at end users at the end of the day. Like there are, caveats in it. There are clauses that sort of say, yeah, we're sort of looking at the creators of those apps, but they know they can't really touch them. So they're going, okay, we are going to punish the end user, just like the war on drugs. Okay, is it the larger cartels that they're taking down successfully? Is it the manufacturers that they're taking down successfully? Or is it their own population that they're incarcerating wholesale? It's the latter of those options. And that's what they're looking at doing here. All right, so just to give you a quick snapshot, desktop applications, mobile apps, gaming apps, payment apps, web-based apps, information and communications technology products and services, artificial intelligence and machine learning, quantum key distribution, quantum communication, quantum computing, post-quantum cryptography, autonomous systems, advanced robotics, biotechnology, synthetic biology, computational biology, and blah, blah, blah. It goes on. You can see how broad-ranging this is right now. This is a huge act that they're looking at that just sort of like is absolutely blanket. Who has control of this? Who's deeming it? Are they bringing together a expert panel who will oversee this? Mm-mm. Is it the government who's overseeing? No, not even that. It's the executive branch. It's the head shed of the government who just get to sit there and go, I like that one. I don't like that one. This one seems okay. Nah, don't want that one. So they just get to point the finger and bang, it's done. Again, these people aren't experts. They're friggin' politicians. They're experts at being politicians, i.e., the expert liars. But that's it. They're the ones in control of this. And what happens when they say this? Well, there are some pretty big bans on this. So just catch up on this. Outback Prep says China have banned Facebook and Instagram, so it wouldn't be a surprise in the US to ban TikTok. Yeah. It's this is not a tit for tat thing. I don't think this is actually US being afraid of losing control of the information of their own. I was about to say constituents. I was about to say population, but really their own prison, their own prisoners, their own force, their own controlled subjects is probably the word. Take the ride. Hi, y'all. Howdy to you. Take the ride on YouTube. Welcome. So this is going to include software, hardware, and any other product service integral to telecommunications, wireless LANs, mobile networks, satellite operations and controls, cable access, wired core network systems, the whole lot. This could be, we start to think about how the, like, let's start to boil this down into, okay, that's a whole heap of like things out there. What could that include? And think about these things, how integral they are to some people's lives. I mean, I think about how some of these things, how integral they are to my life, or how much I've integrated them into my life, at least. Webcams, security cameras, routers, communication software, apps, any app that they want, drones, autonomous vehicles, any sort of stuff like that. All this falls under this act and can be controlled. So what happens if you are a person and they say no TikTok, and you get on there and you do a little Jackson Mahomes dance on there? Well, that just cost you $1 million or 20 years in jail. Like, does it not blow your mind? Again, it's on the population. This is targeted squarely at their own population. I was like, this is fucking shocking. If I was American, I'd be. I mean, I'm not saying TikTok's good or anything, and I'm not saying it's not collecting information for the CCP. It most likely is. I'm not on it myself, and I have no want to be on it. I'm already giving enough information away here. But what it ends up coming down to is choice. That's what I believe. This is anti-libertarian. That's why it offends me so much. But it's the punishment of the individual for doing it that I think is the problem here, or a scary precedent, at least. It's not even a precedent, really, because this is just the extension of, or as some people have been calling it, the Patriot Act on steroids. I bet the US government are loving the shortened attention span TikTok is giving the youth, though. Yeah. I was watching a really interesting video on this, on being critical of what you show your children, because obviously this concerns me now. Not that I'm, going to be sitting my child in front of the TV anytime soon, but kids' TV shows and looking at how they are actually cut together and the amount of slices, so the scene cut, and a lot of the newer ones have an average of 1.5 thereabouts seconds. So that's kind of teaching that every 1.5 seconds or 1 second or half a second or 2 seconds or 1 second or 1.5 seconds, you should be into something else. And also within those scenes, there's always movement. They're always sliding, or zooming or something like that. So it's this constant stimulus that's happening. Whereas you look at some other kids shows that are a bit better, or I believe are a bit better for this sort of stuff, and they'll lock on and they'll stay for 6 seconds. They'll stay for 10 seconds. And they won't move. It'll just be two characters talking, and there's not that much stimulus, and the colors aren't as over the top either, overstimulated. But yeah, certainly a concern. All right, let's jump into something else now. I've got a bunch of stuff here. I also missed some stuff when was it, yesterday, day before, where I did one. China's Fijian Maritime Safety Administration launched a 3-day special joint patrol and inspection. Safety Administration launched a 3-day special joint patrol and inspection operation in the central and northern parts of Taiwan Strait. I just want to read that again. So first off here, China's doing patrols above Taiwan, where they board ships. So that's them basically saying, this is our area, and we do what we want here. And here's our legitimate reason, but we do what we want here. I mean, we've heard this before, i.e. 1 year ago with Russia. Well, that's our area, and so we need to defend it. So we're going to do what we want. So legitimacy of that aside, that's what they're doing. They are essentially poking the US in the eyeball right now to see what they do. Now, the US, to its credit, has sent one of its carriers there, but so has China. So it's sort of this tit for tat thing where China says, hey, we're going to be boarding ships and stuff like that. Taiwan said, we're not participating in that, so do not board our ships, under threat of it escalating into actual conflict. And China said, we're still going to do it. And so Taiwan said, right, US, come in here. And so the US has floated down, and China's gone, cool, I see your ship, and I'll raise you a ship. And we're still going to do it. This is all extension from that meeting. Basically, this is all kind of announced or grew out of proportion, at least, from that meeting between McCarthy and the Taiwanese president, Tsai Ing-yen. Tsai Ing-yen. Any of my Taiwanese friends, let me know how poorly I pronounce that. Anyway, increases in tensions throughout that area. It's never good. Let's jump over to France. What's happening in France? Lots of stuff's happening in France. Obviously, they're still in the midst of their quasi-revolution almost now, I would say. They're into, what are we, week 3 of quite extensive rioting on the streets, which started off from the Macron decision to increase the retirement age. And I've talked about this a little bit on previous podcasts, on previous SitReps. Well, apparently overnight they actually broke into BlackRock's headquarters and set fires to BlackRock. So interesting stuff. What does that have to do with retirement age, Ryan? That's nothing, essentially, but also something. But that's actually not what this story is about. This is about France deciding to raise the age at which a reservist can remain on call, like in the service, in the military. So a reservist, for those who don't know what a reservist is, isn't full time military. It's like a part time military. It's like sometimes military. You go and you practice, once a week or once a fortnight or whatever it is, maybe a week here and there, away doing stuff. Um, and yeah, usually you kind of fade out at the normal time that most people would, but they're raising the limit here for reservists to 70 years old and 72 for people who have specialist qualifications. 70 to 72 years old. Dad's army is getting pulled out. This is sort of shit that scares the crap out of me because obviously I have a military background and I'm over 40 now. So I think I'm pretty safe. If something happened, I'm on that cusp where they might be like, hey, we kind of need you back. And I'd be like, well, I kind of need you to fuck off and get away from me. But if things got bad enough, that would certainly be something that I'd have to look at. But I'm thinking like, hey, I'm 40, falling apart, or got beaten up by the military cycle once. I don't know how much more I can take. Don't you need some 20-year-olds in here? What are all the 20-year-olds doing? Where are you 20-year-olds at, huh? Get them up into the army. But to be honest, like we had a mass exodus from our military, and a lot of the experience that we gained through conflicts like Afghanistan, which obviously spent some time over there doing stuff, has flitted out into the civilian world now and disappeared. So we now have a military of like trained up people, but they have zero experience. So if something was to happen, maybe they want that experience in. They want to keep that experience in. The Australian Army has historically been woeful, and especially over the last decade or two, has been extremely woeful at retention of this sort of experience. They are crap at it. Our special forces units have been emptied of that experience, and they were the ones who had the most experience. So anyway, they've totally lost it, basically. And it's kind of stories like this where I'm like, it's concerning. When we're setting precedents for people to be 70 years old. Think about 70-year-old that you know right now. Now imagine them fighting a war. Does that not terrify you? Terrifies me. Most 70-year-olds I know are not really in that condition. But hey, maybe it might be a good thing. I don't know. All right, let's talk about the price of wheat in Ukraine and unintended consequences. I talk about this a lot, unintended consequences, and I think the Western world is rife with it at this point, where people who I think in their head, ultimately, they're acting from a place that they think is good. They're under the delusion that what they're doing is a good thing. They're well intentioned. I want to believe that, at least. Otherwise, if I don't believe that, then these are some of the most horrifically evil human beings on the face of the earth. That's all I can say. And that I'm talking about our current leadership, right? Our leadership's a poor word. Our current overlords might be a better way to put it. So I think they're well intentioned. I think they mean to do well, and they're trying to see what is the right thing to do, and very much be seen to be doing that right thing. However, this leads to unintended consequences. And here's a classic one. Ukraine war begins February 24th last year. One of the effects of that is Ukraine and parts of Russia are some of the biggest producers of products like wheat, corn, fertilizer, soy, and they flow out into the world, right? and all of a sudden that's curtailed. That's not there. So there's a shortfall in the food that we're creating for the world. And I've said this quite a bit that in richer countries, we won't feel that necessarily. We might start to see a decrease in the tyranny of choice that we have in our supermarkets. There won't be 9 different types of cereal. There'll be 3, and people will be, oh my god, I can't get my favorite cereal. What do you mean you don't have soy milk? Life sucks. I hate Putin. I hate him. That's about the extent that we'll probably feel for a long time in our countries. The bigger things coming, I believe. But when we're feeling that, there are hundreds of millions of people in places like Africa, many, many different countries throughout Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, who are going, I don't know how I'm feeding my family tonight, tomorrow, and for the next week. I don't know how I'm going to do it. There is no food here because that food used to come from places like the Ukraine, and we don't get it anymore. But Putin struck a deal. Did you see this? Putin struck a deal. This was one thing that was actually, it hit the news very briefly and skidded through, and it was angled very much like, oh, Putin's trying to strike a deal about getting grain out now, getting it back up and running again. He's obviously, he's up to no good with this. He probably is, right? He's probably playing the game here and also virtue signaling and backing certain Western thinking into a corner here with it. But anyway, grain, theoretically, will flow out of Ukraine, and it has been. So why is Africa still hungry? Why are they still starving? Why are people still actually starving today? It's because it's getting bought up. Because other countries can afford it. So, grain coming out of Ukraine used to have basically a tax on it or a levy on it, so that would give a fair chance to growers within the Europe continent, i.e., like places like Poland and that, to compete against them. Otherwise, Ukraine could make more, could make it cheaper, and could send it through, flood the market, and then they would have no one to grow their own stuff in places like Poland. So, the interest of what would you say, non-competition, I guess they would put a levy on them. However, they decided to do the right thing and alleviate that so that the poor farmers of Ukraine could get their crops out. And of course, Europe said, sweet, cheap, it's here, let's buy it. What could possibly go wrong? Well, here's what's going wrong. Tensions rising between Eastern European farmers and Ukraine. Rather than all of the Ukrainian grain, etc., going to poor countries, only 27% is. So instead of 100% going to places where people are starving to death, only 27% is going here. And I feel like I say this almost every SitRep. Africa is like the West's blind spot. It's like we don't want to see it. And I think this possibly is an extension of the underlying guilt that seems to be driving our societies nowadays. Like there's this guilt that everyone's carrying around voluntarily, I might add, and loading more on and going like, oh, I'm so guilty. What can I do? Ugh, let me spend some money on a Tesla and then I'll feel less guilty. Well, what they do with Africa is go, the what? They're doing their own thing. I don't know. Look. We did the right thing. We colonized that area. We subjugated their people, and then we left. Oh, did you leave on good terms? Did you make sure that they were set up and ready to roll, and that the transition was healthy for everyone, and they had enough means in order to continue on their own form of governance there? No, we just kind of left. But they're doing their own stuff now, and if it collapses on them, that's their fault. Well, yeah, partially. It is definitely their fault, but partially it's also our fault. um, So I think because of this guilt, I think like the West doesn't really want to look at Africa. I find it horrific, and I like Africa. I've been there a couple of times, and I find it a fascinating place. And it's another part of the world that we're all interconnected as human beings. Like I like to say, it doesn't matter what you think about the difference in us between whatever melatonin levels we have in our skin pigment. We're all red on the inside, all the same sinew and bone and guts and goo on the inside. It's all the same, pretty much, with slight varying differences, especially if you're a male or a female. And that's it. Male or female. That's it. I don't know if you can hear this. I'm not in the background. There's some child play going on. About 25% to Turkey and China, and about half to Western Europe. That's where the grain is going out of Ukraine. So Europe is soaking up half of the grain coming out of Ukraine, 25% Turkey and China for some reason. And then 27% makes its way into Africa, a huge continent. So this is, though, I will say, like people are looking at this and going like, "Oh, what a shock! Who could have thought this would happen?" I don't know. Anyone who's ever had even a cursory glance at how commerce works in the most basic way, when people have more money and more ability to buy up stuff, they'll buy up stuff if they feel they need it. And well, I think Europe feels like it needs it. So yeah, this has triggered protests in Poland and Bulgaria. Poland's agricultural minister promised financial support from the government and the European Union and easier rules for constructing grain storage as he met Wednesday with farmers angered by falling grain prices. So the flooding of the market is obviously dropping the grain price. Farmers in Poland blame the drop in prices on the market glut from the inflow of huge amounts of Ukrainian produce that was supposed to go to Africa and the Middle East. Bulgarian farmers also staged a protest Wednesday over the issue. Of course, so how do you fix the problem? We'll financial support. We'll print some more money, throw that out there. Nothing could go wrong with that. Not at all. I'm sure it'll all be fine. Here's another story. Grain from Ukraine hits EU farmers with pain. Just wait until Kiev joins the club. Russia's invasion nearly a year ago decimated Ukraine's harvest and obstructed grain exports that accounted for a tenth of the world's total. Now the vast agrarian nation is back. Its produce flooding the markets of the European Union's eastern member countries. It's a nightmare for farmers in Ukraine's EU neighbors, and the region's governments are calling for an urgent response to soften the impact after grain imports shot up to millions of tons last year from a few thousand tons in prior years. Just throw money at it. That's all we need to do. Here's another story from the BBC talking about the same thing, and they asked the question, what good has it done? What is the Ukraine grain deal and what good has it done? So remember, people were falling over themselves to get this grain deal up and running, and they did it, and then maybe didn't fully see through where it was actually going. The idea, I think, again, well-intentioned, that it goes to Africa and the Middle East. These two places of the world, Middle East and Africa, I think, are going to be in an utter state. I mean, they are in a state of collapse, really. Many of the nations within those two areas are in a state of collapse. We're going to see collapse wholesale throughout these areas. Also, what happens when you don't get proper nutrition or any nutrition to a population? It leaves individuals more susceptible to disease and health issues. Are there any diseases or health issues happening in Africa right now? Yes, the answer. For those who didn't watch my last SitRep, Marburg virus. I was talking about this in the last one. Marburg virus, Ebola type viruses as well, but a number of them. So this could be the next petri dish the pathogen that could be the next pandemic very could well come out of Africa. Life came out of Africa. Now death could also come out of Africa, and I'm talking like very soon, very, very soon. All right, last one I've got. We're back over in the US here with some US data, which is not good. Financial stuff. I just put up a reel about some financial stuff. A good friend of mine sent through a video on Rumble, and so I jumped on Rumble and went like, "Hey, this is kind of cool." So that's why I've hopefully got this this running on there now. We'll see if it works or not. But it was about the Australian banks and who actually owns Australian banks. So this person did a little bit of an investigation where they looked at the reports that are put out, self-reporting put out by the banks. These are like 200 plus page documents, and he looked at the top 8 banks in Australia, and they have to list certain things like who owns their shares if they own X amount. And they found it's the same, pretty much the same 5 corporations throughout the world. HSBC, I want to say State Street, US concern, 2 US, HSBC, I don't know where they are. International? Hong Kong? China? Barnabas, the what is it? Barnius, the French one. Anyway, that's that is what it is. But really, those concerns are only intermediaries. It's other companies that actually buy them, and if those companies are over 5%, then they have to list those as well. And so we found out that Vanguard, BlackRock, and one other American one, they're pretty much the owners of that stuff, or they're the ones with big ties into it. Remember, they only have to do that if it's over 5%. Could they theoretically then split down into smaller entities? Are there smaller companies that say BlackRock owns 4.9%, 4.9%, 4.9%? Yes, potentially. That could also happen. So the long and the short of this little rant is that the Australian banks are owned by foreign interests, and many of those foreign interests are US based. It shouldn't be a shock to anyone. All right, that should not be a shock to anyone. But some people think that Australian stuff is actually Australian owned. Well, wake the fuck up, because it ain't. The point that I'm trying to get across here is that things that happen in the US will affect Australia. I always say that we are more insulated than many other parts of the world, and there are many reasons for that, many factors for that. But we are also interconnected, or entangled is actually the word that I would probably more likely use, in the world economic system, and especially like when you see examples like this with the banking system with the US. So what happens in the US matters. It matters to us down here in Australia. Small businesses file for bankruptcy at record pace, surpassing the COVID crash. So you might remember this. Cast your memory back all the way, if you can remember that far back, to just a couple of years ago, that we had a huge amount of bankruptcies all of a sudden happen because our governments, in their infinite wisdom, said, nobody goes to work. Nobody goes to work. We've got a disease going on. Nobody can work. I don't want you going out there. I don't want you touching each other and getting fucking cooties off each other and then passing those cooties around. All right, we can't have that. So nobody goes to work. Just a question. Our main workforce is how old? Between 20 and 45. Cool. Between 20 and 45, what's the likelihood of people contracting these cooties seriously, as in a damaging level? Statistically insignificant. Right. But we're still going to lock them up. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely we'll lock them up. That makes sense. Why? Because I'm the government. Now shut up and go home and get your... That was satire, by the way. Sarcasm, really. So because of that, we had a whole heap of businesses going bankrupt, and unsurprisingly, the ones that hit the news were the tiny little fraction of larger businesses that kind of went under. There was a huge amount of small businesses, of sole traders, of individual, of mums and dads, of Joes and Janes that went under, and nobody even saw it. They just got crushed under the wheels of government authoritarianism. Anyway, it was a huge amount, but apparently there's more now, which to me makes sense because I've often said that the fallout from what we did in that time period is yet to come. And what we're doing now is eating the bitter fruit that we have sown during those COVID lockdowns. Now we're taking a bite of that shit sandwich that we put together then. And surprise, surprise, it doesn't taste any better. It tastes significantly worse now. And I think people are starting to realize that we're going to have to finish this sandwich. It's not even one of those like little tip top sandwiches. This thing's a fucking foot long. And we've only taken like 2 bites so far. And we're looking down the other, I'm not really good on imperial, but 10 inches of this foot long of shit and going like, oh God, we're going to have to eat it. This is going to keep happening. There's going to be more of this. Small businesses across the US are experiencing a surge in bankruptcies, surpassing levels not seen since 2020. Short story long here. What's actually happening? This is just yet another data point that we are seeing the crash. I read a lot of historical novels. I look especially at places that have crashed. I've been to places that have crashed, and I read current information about places that have collapsed, on some level. I'm fascinated by this. And one thing that I find is very interesting in all of them is that we look back, especially in history books, the really good history books, the really good historians are the ones who highlight this fact here, that it's not like, oh, we collapsed. One day we'll find, next day the Roman Empire was over. It happens over a time period and through steps. And I am convinced that the people living through those points probably didn't know that they were living in the collapse of an empire. They could see declines, but as much as I can glean from looking at history books, I would imagine that these people would be like, yeah, things are worse than what they were, but the Roman Empire will come back. We'll get back on our feet. Same sort of stuff that we're seeing right now from our leaders. Yeah, things are bad now, but a couple of banks collapsed, and we didn't bail them out. We gave them money, but that's not a bailout. It's different because I said so. But things will get better. Things will get better. Stock market will keep going up. Everything will be great. Nothing to worry about. Go buy an EV. Things, I don't think will get better. I think we are in the decline. I don't think, like, personally, I'm neither really here nor there that like the full collapse will happen. I think things will get worse, and that's what I keep saying. I think we're going into a period of consequences. We're going into a period where things are going to be tougher than they have been in previous years. And that's only because things in previous years, and I'm talking about the previous 4 or 5 decades, have been utterly abundant, have been utterly easy in reality. There's been hard points, and there's been people who have gone through harder times. But on the whole, as a world, I think we can clearly track that more people have come out of poverty, that more people have had a better quality of life. I don't think that will be carrying forward for too much longer. This is yet another data point of that. Financial collapse is coming. Our financial system is about to change. They're about to change it over. Be warned. What do I think they're going to change it over to? Unsurprisingly, I think they're going to go for more control, and it'll be a CBDC. I think conditions will continue getting worse, and I think that some parts of the government will actually, and large corporations, want it to get worse. In fact, they may even be manufacturing it to get worse, at risk of getting me banned. Put my tinfoil hat on. I think maybe they're actually manufacturing it to get worse. Because when things get bad enough, or when people believe things get bad enough, they don't just seek an answer, they demand that the government does the answer for them. Proof in the pudding of that is what happened over the last 3 years, where people were lining up for something, where people were happy to be locked down in their home and not work. People were happy for the government to do whatever the fuck they wanted, as long as mum and daddy government was there to tell them what to do. Nobody really thought about it by themselves. So this is where I think we're going. I think our financial system, they know that it cannot survive. It physically cannot survive. So they're going, okay, well, let's make things bad. So when that no soy milk and that choice of 3 cereals then goes to choice of no cereals, lineups at supermarkets, people getting that little fear spike, Aussies going like, but I don't have any food at home. What do I do? Help! Government, help! My money is useless now. This inflation has just got this magic demon that is inflation, which came out of nowhere. Who could have seen it coming? We don't know how inflation started. And the government goes, yeah, I know, inflation, right? Oh, we don't know where it came from anyway. Probably had nothing to do with us printing money and making the money useless. That's probably not anything to do with inflation. But I tell you what, we can fix it. We can make your money worth something again. All you have to do is actually nothing. We'll do it for you. We're going to deposit the money into your account. It's a new account. It's an electronic account. It's called a central bank digital currency, but you'll have plenty of money. So you don't have to worry. And the people will fall to their knees and go, yes, government, give it to me. Step on my neck harder. Oh, yeah, choke me harder, daddy. That's it. That's what's happening. That's what's going on. That's where I think we're going. How do we protect ourselves from this? We can see that we know this is happening. We can see that there's going to be a decline, at least in the financial system, if not a collapse happening. We can diversify our wealth now. Money, cash money issued by the government is not wealth. It is a extrinsic representation of wealth. It is not actual wealth. Go and get real wealth. Real wealth, and I said this in my post this morning, or typed it in my post this morning, land in which you can grow food, that's wealth. Food, if you can't do that, storing up food, that's wealth. Knowledge, skills, abilities, your health, these are all wealth. If you want to get into the representation of wealth, gold and silver, precious metals, these are a historically proven store of wealth. This is not crypto scam. This is not we're going to the moon with this. It's going to earn you X times, blah, blah, blah. That's not what gold and silver is about. Gold and silver is a bank, your own personal bank, not one of the dodgy banks, our own personal bank. You buy the gold at this amount of money, and it holds that value. No matter what the money does, the gold is the same gold. That's what that's all about. So it's a store of wealth over time, not an investment, not something to be making money off. Although that can happen, I guess, also. All right. Deliberate collapse to cover up their extreme greed. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, so this is another data point that I think we're seeing here. We believe one of the more underappreciated signs of distress in the US corporate credit is already emanating from small and mid-sized enterprises sector. This coming from Matthew Mish, head of credit strategy at UBS, from a research note that he did. Industries hardest hit by the wave of bankruptcies include real estate. That, if that's not setting off alarm bells in your head, you haven't been listening, you haven't been watching, right? Real estate, okay. So this is where those bankruptcies are happening from people who are selling real estate, companies that are selling real estate. Healthcare, chemicals, and retail outlets. according to the Swiss bank's report. Also, retail outlets expect things to get cheaper realm for a little bit. I'm kind of expecting. I'm already seeing it. I mean, if you're paying attention, despite inflation, we're seeing reduction in the price of things. The kind of like useless. No, it's not useless. Everything's useful, right? But like this sort of stuff that I don't need to sustain my life necessarily. But these sort of things, I was talking about this in the last podcast too. This is included in CPI data as well. Flat screen TVs are included in CPI data. All right. You do not need a flat screen TV to live. You need food, you need shelter, you need water. And all three of those things are up, way up. That's why CPI data, I say it's an interesting indicator. But when they're saying like, oh, it's 8.9% inflation on CPI, no. It's 15 to 20% inflation at the very least on those. They fudge the numbers hardcore on that. All right. So, yet another warning: diversify your wealth, look after yourselves, invest in land, invest in food, invest in your own health and well-being, and store knowledge in your head. Learn stuff, learn skills. That's probably one of the best ways I think you can spend your hard-earned dosh. Is find courses, go do courses, not university courses, but buy books. I have many books, many leather-bound books. I don't actually have that many. I don't know if I have any leather-bound books, but I've got many books. So that's where you should be probably thinking about putting your money right now. Yeah. All right, that's it for today, gang. Motorcycle and silver. Oddly enough, talking about this with my brother, that he just missed out. There was a 100-year anniversary BMW or something came out, and he said, "I'm gonna buy it." I said, "Motorbike, man? Like, why?" And he goes, "It's an investment." And I was like, "A form of transport isn't usually an investment. They're a depreciating asset." He goes, "Not these. Not these. These always sell for higher than in the future than what they sold for at that point of sale." I thought that's interesting. So yeah, maybe motorcycle, Chris, or a motorcycle made of silver. All right, that's it for today. I'll leave you on that very weird note: motorcycles made of silver. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, I am in the process of trying to sort through my prepper gear, and then I'm going to have the prepper garage sale. And it's not really a sale. I'm going to be giving away old stuff, old used stuff, and I'll figure out a way to do that soon. I've got a number of messages from people, and I really appreciate you sending through messages like, "Hey, I need this and I need that." I'm like, cool. I'm not doing it that way. What I will do is I'll probably post up what it is, whatever it's going to be, day to day, and say, if you want this, do something, tag people or whatever the fucking algorithm shit that helps. Somebody was telling me to do this the other day, so I was like, all right, I'll do it. You know, I don't like doing this social media shit, but I'll do it because, as they rightly explained to me, the more people we can get involved in this channel, the more people can take on this information, can help spread the word, the better off we're all going to be. So help spread the word, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, blah, blah, blah. And until next time, gang, Semper Paratus.